Now, welcome back. Now, there has been significant development in Namibia's energy sector recently that could position Namibia as Africa's next big oil frontier and a regional hub for green energy. In terms of the country's economic blueprint, these developments have the potential to put the country well on track for its economic recovery. Now, Mr. Shakwa Nyambe is in his capacity as an energy and natural resource lawyer and director of the Association of International Energy Negotiators, IENA, Africa's chapter, is now joining us in studio to talk about how we can leverage these opportunities as a country, how to drive new investment and development across the energy landscape in Namibia. Good morning, sir, and welcome.
Good morning to you lot, and good morning to the viewers who are tuned on. No. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Maybe let's just start, perhaps, what is an energy and natural resource lawyer, just before we get into the tackle of all this terminology?
Thank you so much. So an energy and natural resources lawyer is lawyers who are advising energy and natural resources companies undertaking projects all over the world, not only limited to Namibia. As they go through their projects, we advise them from the conception of ideas up to the time they start the development and the production. So we advise them on all legal and business issues.
Okay. Let's talk about what is your role currently in Namibia, if perhaps even if you play any role when it comes to the issue of, as a legal expert, when it comes to guiding our decision makers, such as the energy projects following, for instance, the oil and gas discovery in Namibia.
Yes, my role as a natural resources and energy lawyer is to provide legal and business advisory to the companies who are setting up shop in Namibia, those who are already operating in Namibia. We give them a wide range of services from corporate formations, as well as advising them on the licensing and permitting. We advise them on the contract negotiations. We help them to seal the deals with the government, as well as with other state-owned enterprises like NAMCO.
Okay. Let's talk about the fact that, you know, this oil discovery that has been made. What are some of the legal and fiscal regimes what are some of these fiscal, you know, let's look at the legal and fiscal implications or processes involved with these discoveries?
Yes, thank you. I think the key legal regime is the Petroleum Exploration and Production Act 2 of 1991. So it's so key because this is the piece of legislation which tells you what happens once a discovery of oil and gas has been made in Namibia. It tells you what you need to do, the information to be supplied to the Ministry of Mines and Energy. It tells you when do you have to do the appraisal to determine the exact number of reserves. You know, when do you have to apply for a production license? What is the duration of the production license? What are the conditions attached to that production license? And the key physical regime is the Petroleum Taxation Act 3 of 1991. So this one just tells you what are the royalties to be paid to government, the petroleum tax, additional profit tax, you know, as well as the expenses, you know, and those expenditure which are allowed to be deducted when you're operating Namibia.
Okay, now for a layman, basically, you know, people talk about, you know, there's general tax that you are likely to pay.
Yes.
There are royalties that you are likely to pay. Government is likely to benefit. We've seen the minister speak about this, that, you know, obviously you can basically be double dipping in terms of income. Explain, what is the difference between a normal income that is expected to be paid on these discoveries if we start exploration and royalties?
Yeah, so there is a difference from the normal income tax under our normal income tax act, which is applicable to most businesses. So for the oil and gas sector, we have a specific or special legislation, which is the Petroleum Taxation Act of 1991. So it gives you the rates in terms of royalty. What is it you have to pay to the government? At the moment, it's a royalty of around 5%. And then it gives you the petroleum income tax to be paid, which is around 35%, as well as additional profit tax. You know, as your project goes on and then you make profit up to exceeding certain threshold, then you still need to pay additional tax to the government. So it's a whole lot of taxes that when they're combined together with what the National Oil Company of Namibia is getting, it's a big take for the government. As the minister have said in the past and other commentators, it's a big take up to 55% upward. So it's big. It's a big thing for the government. Yeah.
Okay. Let's look at the recent announcement in terms concerning the deep offshore oil discoveries. Take us through some of the legal and business issues that will probably arise as a result of this project, from the discovery to production.
Yes. As you move from discovery production, there is a whole lot of legal and business issues which will automatically come to the fore. The labor issues, you'll be employing a whole large number of employees as a company. You need to deal with those issues. Taxation issues, I have just explained the tax regime which is applicable to Namibia. You have custom issues because these companies will be importing and bringing a lot of equipment, a lot of personnel to the country. You also have environmental issues. These are very critical issues and regulated in Namibia very strictly.
Okay. Let's perhaps talk about especially the issue of the environment. I think there have been recent concerns, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Yes.
But do you think perhaps the recent discoveries that were made in Namibia in terms of the law, those that obviously are making these discoveries and trying to test where the oil is, was the environmental process followed?
Yes, I certainly say so, because we have a very stringent environmental regulation in Namibia. The Environmental Management Act itself of 2007 is regulations on impact environmental assessment, as well as the Petroleum Act itself. It has a lot of stringent and quite a number of provisions on environmental protections. So it's highly regulated. The Environmental Ministry, Environmental Commission and the team have experience in this. They've done this with the mining sector, I remember, for so many years, be it with diamonds, uranium, gold. They've managed to do this. So this is not the first time that our environmental regulators will be dealing with this. And they're applying the law as it is. They're doing the compliance and the inspection as they usually do with the mining sector.
Where does the feeling possibly come from when the committee said maybe they are not engaged enough in terms of stakeholder engagement? Because I'm assuming that, for one, in order to advance with these oil discoveries that they're making, there are certain processes that must be followed. Where does a mismatch, for instance, with the communities in the Kavango West and East region come from your point of view?
Yes, from my point of view, stakeholder engagement and consultation, obviously that is a process which is required by the Environmental Management Act. When you do the environmental management assessment, you are required to show that you have done the stakeholder engagement, to show the people you have consulted, the interested and affected communities. And then you submit that. It's only once the Environmental Commission is satisfied that you have complied with all these statutory requirements that they will issue an environmental clearance. So remember that there's a lot of interested groups when it comes to the natural resources sector. So there are those, even if you have done enough of this consultation, they'll still, say this is not enough, or they are anti the development of oil and gas. So you will never have a balanced views when it comes to this oil and gas exploration. No. There's a view of those who don't want it, and there's a view of that who say this is big and it's needed for the development of the country.
Okay, let's talk about the fact that now we have this discovery that has been made in terms of oil. Are there any perhaps pending or upcoming new regulatory framework that would affect this kind of sector that is obviously likely to become a new sector and a contributor to our economic development in Namibia?
Yes, certainly. I think the likely upcoming policies and the law is the local content policy as well as its regulation. So local content is, this is the benefits which an extractive project like oil and gas or mining brings to the local, regional, national economy. So this policy, the government is already working on this one. That's what we've been told. It's at advanced stage. Once this is implemented, it's going to promote the participation of Namibians within the oil and gas sector. It's going to maximize, the use of local suppliers in the whole value chain, maximize the employment of Namibia, ensure that there's transfer of skills and technology. So this is a very vital piece of legislation for the local businesses.
Okay, maybe perhaps I'm just going to ask the question that most Namibians keep wanting to hear. Does it mean if we reach production, do we possibly see the liters of petrol becoming cheaper than it currently is? Will it the possibility of cheaper prices for Namibians?
Well, it will take some time. Remember, the refined petroleum products we're using, the fuel, it gets refined somewhere else. So once we have production of oil, in future, if we have refineries here, that will help in terms of reducing some of the costs of the fuel, because at the moment, these costs are compounded by many things. The original source of the crude oil, where it comes from, up to the place where it's landing in Walvis Bay. So there are many factors including that. So once we have the production and we have refinery in Namibia, that will be a game changer in terms also of reducing the prices of fuel.
Let's talk about the fact that you mentioned the issue of refinery, and it's unfortunate. I'm going to use Nigeria as an example.
Yes.
Because since 1994, I think they have been the 5th top world producer of fuel, but they are still in the same situation because they don't have refineries. What can Namibia do that is perhaps different from Nigeria to ensure that we have refineries? Because right now we have an oil storage facility.
Yes.
But what can be done from your point of view to enable Namibia to be in a better position?
Yeah, I think Namibia has a lot to learn from other oil and gas producing nations, not only in Africa but in the world, in terms of how do you manage the upstream, what you produce from the ground, the midstreams and the downstream, to ensure that it's refined and you successfully integrate it in the economy in terms of the fuel stations and others. So there's a lot to learn, and we are already regulated in that space. Petroleum Products Act of Namibia is there. The Ministry of Mines and Energy is already regulating in terms of the wholesale license, retail licenses. And I think we are so privileged that we can learn from others and ensure that we do it properly. And the legal framework is there, the institutions are there. So it will be easy. It should be easy to handle. Yeah.
Okay, I think we're definitely hoping that if we are alive in the next 15 years, maybe we can be able to have deliberate on this conversation further. But let's talk about your reappointment to the AIEN Board of Directors for a 3rd term. Talk to us about that. I mean, what is the notion behind the association? What does that mean? What is the mandate of the African Charter? And what does it mean personally for you as well as Namibia?
Well, it means a lot to be reappointed to as a director on the board of the Association of International Energy Negotiators. So the AIEN, as it's abbreviated, is an independent, not-for-profit voluntary association, which enhances effectiveness and professionalism for international energy negotiators around the globe. So they do quite a lot of things in terms of creating the model agreements for the energy sector. These model agreements are widely used and accepted. Examples is the Joint Operating Agreement, Drilling Agreement, Purchase and Sale Agreement. And the institution is headquartered in the U.S. in Texas. For Africa, I'm the regional chapter. They have regions across all the continents. So I have a committee which I work with to ensure that our inputs as Africans is considered. We influence the narrative in terms of all these model agreements they do. Our involvement in the energy sector as well, it's enhanced as Africans. Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about what we will be focusing during your term, basically,
Yes.
the fact that you're going back. I mean, maybe let's include the context that Namibia has found oil, possible oil discoveries that are there, obviously up for production. With that in mind, what will be your focus?
Yeah, my focus for this term, obviously, I would like to increase the membership within the African our member states to ensure that as Africans we get involved. We don't want to be left when they're driving the narrative within the energy sectors. And then we want to bring more activities to Africa in terms of trainings and workshops, the major cities of Africa. But the most important thing is for us Africans to be involved, to influence the narrative. As we speak now, everybody's talking about green hydrogen. So we have a task force within the AIEN and the committee, and I'm a member of that, including some of the fellow Africans from other countries. We'll be responsible to come up with the model agreements for green, and blue hydrogen. These are the agreements which will be used commonly and around the world as time progresses. So that's the influence and the narrative will be coming in. So we are getting involved from the beginning. We're sitting on the table with other world leaders, and influencers. Unlike in the past where we just come and then
You're on the receiving end.
Yeah, this is the product, this is the model agreement you should use. You don't know how it was crafted. There's no influence from Africa. So we are getting involved now as Africans, and I'm using this committee to ensure that our involvement is at a higher level.
Okay. Any final remarks before we let you go this morning?
Yes, thanks a lot. I think what general people, most people in Namibia don't realize, maybe as well as some lawmakers, is that the recent oil and gas discoveries by Total and Shell is a big game changer in terms of the royalties to be paid, the taxes, employment opportunities, transfer of technology. This is big. I mean, it's projected that these two discoveries only will bring annually to the government of Namibia around 52 billion Namibian dollars. Those are the projections by the Wood Mackenzie Group. Just imagine all that kind of revenue. We have a big country debt for the country, which is, I think the last figures was 140 billion.
Yes.
This could help in offsetting this in a few years. So this is very big, and it should be taken very seriously because it's going to impact the economy in the country in a positive way.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for sharing some of your views this morning, and we wish you all the best in your new term as you continue to lead the African Charter Group.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, that was the energy and natural resource lawyer, Shakwa Nyambe, talking to us about the recent discovery of oil in Namibia, what it means, and also about his re-election as a director of the Association of the International Energy Negotiators, IEINS mandate. Now, do stay tuned. Namibia gets to return shortly after this short break.